Engine Manual, a story by user OperationTechnician. "So, sir, what are we doing today?" asked Greg. Greg was a spider-like 2-meter-tall shellin, with no visible eyes and 4 very precise, strong working limbs. Greg was a graduate of the Royal Fleet Academy, top of his class, and this was his first day as an engineer on the heroic battleship Escapade. Everyone knew about battleship Escapade. It was the most famous craft in the region, having survived what some dreadnoughts did not, and what no battleship should have. It was the only battleship in the Royal Navy that didn't have a standard-issue black paint job, and its white-gold colors brought feelings of excitement to any allies alongside the kilometer-long craft. Greg was very excited. "What do they teach you kids about writing in manuals nowadays?" The chief engineer ignored the question. The chief was an old wreck, effortlessly maneuvering through the hallways with its dozen tentacle limbs. It wore a rebreather around its core bulb that allowed it to work alongside the mostly shellin crew. "Writing, sir? Only the manufacturer should write them, and we should follow them. So nothing." The chief swiped a card over the hatch and it slid aside. Stepping into the internal airlock, the 2 aliens waited for the outer doors to close and the inner door to open, letting them into the highest deck of engineering. The deck was a circular platform with a vast hole in the center. A structural beam several meters across connected the engine to the frame of the ship. The force exerted by the engine was transferred to the battleship by this beam, along several others to the sides. Greg rushed over to the inner hole of the deck, leaning over and down. There, going 100 meters down, was the mass of the engine, lit up by hundreds of spotlights and surrounded by walkways and beams. This was the muscle and power source of the vast craft. Greg knew a lot about Elation-class battleships. He knew even more about their engines. And he knew this was not a VSAL 90 AAGH engine. What? Greg considered if asking the question would be wise. What if he was supposed to know this? He asked anyway. "What class of engine is this?" "Never be afraid to ask the stupidest questions. If you don't, you'll get us all killed." The chief engineer slithered up the railing and looked down as well. "It is human." "The model?" "No, the engine." "The Escapade has a non-standard engine?" "The original VSAL engine was destroyed. Humans repaired the ship and installed their own engine." The chief waved for Greg to follow, and they descended several decks. "We call her the H engine, or the H drive. She is capable of 3 times the energy output and 2 times the forward thrust." "Amazing! Why aren't all Elation battleships equipped with these?" 1. The humans don't sell these. 2. We cannot recreate her. 3. The chief rotated to face Greg. There is a very limited number of crew who can service her." The shaft opened midway down the engine. Another shellin stood there, waiting for them with a really big binder. The binder, which had to be several thousand pages thick, was handed to Greg along with a pencil. The binder was human style, opening to the left to reveal ring-bound pages. On top, in marker, the human letters "Manual" were written under the typed Type 5 Zeta DD Decel Frigate Maneuvering Thruster. The chief led Greg down a hallway, across the gap between the deck and the engine, up to a platform pressed into the guts of the vast machine. A tentacle reached out, stopping short of touching a pipe. This is the main backup coolant line. 7 coolant systems before it need to fail before it comes into play. Replace it. The dread in the chief's voice made Greg re-examine the pipe. It was 3 centimeters thick, 1 meter long, and had 2 curves. The pipe connected 2 machine blocks. Greg turned around to ask a question, but the chief was already gone. Opening the manual, Greg began to flip through it. There were thousands of pages of the original here, but several inserted, handwritten sheets separated each, adding up to what had to be over 4,000 pages. Greg looked at the jumbled insert-filled index and flipped to the coolant system. Skipping past the overall system diagrams, he found the main backup coolant system, and looked for his task. He found the entire coolant block outlined by hand on a non-original page, describing its function and common problems. The How to Replace note simply referred to the coolant volume. The coolant volume, a second equally thick, originally assembled binder, was handed to him by a tired shellin on the uppermost deck of the engineering section. There, he finally found the full specs on the left main backup coolant module, and the page on replacing the line. The general guide on the process was crossed out with a pen, and an arrow pointed to the side of the page. Flipping to the handwritten sheets, Greg saw a replacement parts list and a step-by-step process on replacing the line. The parts list made no sense. Aside from the coolant pipe, inner lining, spare bolts, and insulator rings, there was an array of unrelated items that no standard repair he knew of needed. He decided he would not be a laughingstock by asking for metal bars, insulator tape, 3 hammers, and a stethoscope. Inventory quickly and efficiently processed his request, and produced a pipe, inner lining, spare bolts, and insulator rings. Going back to the module, Greg shut down and drained the module. He quickly, efficiently, and professionally removed the bolts, then the pipe, then the inner lining. With equal skill, he replaced the parts with fresh ones, secured the bolts, inspected his work, and turned on the module. The red lights came on after Greg was bathed in a spray of still-warm coolant. 8 hours later, dirty, tired, and angry, Greg laid out his 6th set of pipe, inner lining, spare bolts, and insulator rings, along with 3 hammers, 2 metal bars, insulator tape, and a stethoscope. Flipping all the way back to the first page of the initial volume, Greg read the handwritten message titled, Step 0. Sitting down, he folded his limbs, relaxed, and sent a prayer to the spaghetti monster. A step he saw proof of was necessary. Rising, he washed his hands, sprayed the freshly cleaned module and parts with distilled anti-rust holy water, and put a drop of WD-40 on all the moving bits. Following each step to the letter, Greg made sure all the parts, hammers, and parts matched the parts list. As all of the other steps definitely didn't apply to his situation, due to the lack of electronic, combustion, and anti-gravity modules, he closed the main manual and brought closer the coolant volume. Following the manual to every handwritten, crossed-out letter, Greg wrapped the inner lining with tape in 3 places, warmed it up with a heat gun, and inserted it into the pipe. He then wrapped the pipe threads with insulator tape, put on the WD-sprayed insulator rings and bolts, and reinserted the pipe. The 2 hammers went between the curved pipe and the modules it connected, setting the exact distance between. The 3rd hammer was used to beat the titanium pipe into the modules. Hand-screwing the 2 bolts on, Greg set the 2 wrenches from his toolkit on each, and put a metal bar on the handles of those. Using the metal bar as oversized levers, Greg simultaneously twisted, pressing the bolts in on their threads. Satisfied the pipe was well in place, Greg proceeded to lean on each wrench. First the bottom, then the top, then the bottom, then the top again, ensuring the bolts did not move again without his will. Pressing the stethoscope to each module in turn, Greg used the spare hammer to lightly ring the pipe, listening to the reverberation within. Satisfied, he removed the 2 hammers, freed the wrenches from the bent pipes, and wiped everything down. A wire went into the open electronics panel, bypassing a sensor, before Greg finally turned on the module again. Something hummed, clicked, and a fine layer of frost covered the pipe. Greg carefully added a 2nd wire in a 2nd spot, removed the 1st and finally the 2nd, closed the panel, and stepped back on the platform. His minute of listening to the hum of the main backup coolant module was interrupted by the variety of alien cheering from the decks above and below him. Mechanics and engineers were applauding and giving him signs of approval from all around the engine. Greg stared at them, then back at the module, and quietly closed the manual. If you're new here, welcome aboard. Check out the description for the story, and join the Discord if you like. Consider supporting the channel and the author as well. It's a dangerous world out there, but remember to be brave and look up to seek the stars.